Echoes of Latin American racism reverberate in the U.S. And they holding up a sign here that says all racists must resign. Protesters gather outside City Hall, calling for the resignations of City Council members who were recorded using racist and offensive language. Okay. So, Los Angeles. Ivan Vasquez arrived in Los Angeles in 1996. A teenager who had crossed the border to find work and improve the lot of his family in Mexico as a newbie washing dishes in restaurants. The young man from the majority indigenous state of Oaxaca was often called Oaxaquita or Little Oaxacan by other Mexicans because of his deep tan skin and diminutive stature. Still, he eventually rose to become a regional manager at Baja Fresh and opened his own restaurant in 2013, a celebration of his native state's unique cuisine. Powered by mole, this may be mole or mole, and mezcal, the restaurant Madre has won rave reviews from food critics and grown to 3 locations in a city that embraces multiculturalism. So Vasquez, now 41, was shocked this week to hear disparaging remarks about Oaxacans from Nuri Martinez, a powerful Latina politician who was president of the city council. A recording of a closed-door meeting in 2021 in which Martinez was heard referring to Oaxacans as a lot of little, short, dark people who were so ugly, was published over the weekend by the Los Angeles Times, creating a firestorm that has yet to subside in the country's second largest city. Martinez, who also made derogatory comments about black people, resigned from the council on Wednesday. 2 other Hispanic council members who were heard in a meeting in which they discussed ways to enhance Latino political power are facing a cascade of calls to give up their seats as well. It's painful to realize the discrimination never went away, Vasquez said. This is not what you expect of LA. But the revelations did not feel unfamiliar to many community leaders and immigrants who have long faced discrimination in the United States at the hands of fellow Hispanic people who have carried the racist attitudes prevalent in Latin America to their new country. They just made public that their colonial minds have not changed, said Odilia Romero, director and co-founder of Comunidades Indígenas and Liderazgo, or Indigenous Community in Leadership. People from native pre-colonial communities in Latin America have frequently faced harassment in Los Angeles, a city that prides itself for being tolerant and diverse, and not just from white people. The assumption that if you're a Latino and progressive, you don't hold racist views ignores the reality that racism is very deeply ingrained in Mexican and Latin American cultures, said Gabriela Domenzain, a Mexican-American who worked as a Hispanic community expert in both the Obama 2012 and O'Malley 2016 presidential campaigns. Latin America is one of the world's most ethnically diverse regions, and throughout its history, racial and ethnic groups have converged there. Indigenous people, white colonizers, and black people brought as slaves. Their mixing gave rise to a browning of Latin America, with people of different shades of skin depending on their heritage. Many people are now of mixed ethnicity, but people with lighter skin have remained at the top of the socio-economic hierarchy, while those with darker skin, whether indigenous or black, often tend to be poorer and to be shut out of elite social and political circles. That unofficial caste system was exported to the United States, which has its own history of racial stratification and tensions. Among Latinos, who are all considered people of color, studies have found that those who are lighter skinned are more likely to make economic strides than their darker skinned brethren, such as black Cubans, indigenous Mexicans, and Central Americans. What you get is this convergence of colonial racism from Latin America recreated in communities in the U.S., said Lynn Stevens, a professor of ethnic studies at the University of Oregon. Indigenous Mexicans and Central Americans typically are shorter and have darker skin than other Latinos, and their first language is often not Spanish. Prejudice against them is commonplace at workplaces, in farm fields, in restaurants, and even on construction sites, where subcontractors sometimes separate indigenous crews from other Latinos on the same job to avoid conflict. We are regarded as dark, short people, brown people, who are ugly and ignorant, said Arsenio Lopez, a former farm worker who is executive director of Mixteco Indigenous Community Organization Project, an organization that advocates for indigenous field workers in California. On top of being exploited by employers, indigenous farm workers suffer discrimination from co-workers, he said. Gaspar Rivera Salgado, a Oaxacan who now directs the Center for Mexican Studies at UCLA, said that too often the tremendous diversity of the Latino population in the United States is overlooked. If you say Latinos, you are lumping together Nuri Martinez, Ted Cruz, everybody, he said. Martinez is Mexican-American. Cruz, the Texas senator, is the son of a Cuban immigrant. But their lived experiences are completely different, Rivera Salgado said. The terms Hispanic and Latino have become embedded in the American mosaic, appearing in census forms, newspapers, and political polling since a law passed in 1976 began requiring federal agencies to aggregate into one group data on people who trace their ancestry to Spanish-speaking countries. The classification is based on common language, culture, and heritage, not race. See, people in the category are far from homogeneous. Many have roots in Mexico, while others are Puerto Ricans, Argentines, Colombians, Cubans, Spaniards, and of course, indigenous people. And you also have black people too, you know. Yeah, you go to Puerto Rico, you find black people in certain areas in Puerto Rico. And also, same with Panama, for example. Yeah, Panama, Guatemala. Recognizing this heterogeneity, Barack Obama's presidential campaign in 2012 ads that were tailored to particular Latino populations and their countries of origin. In Central Florida, ads targeting the Puerto Rican community featured Puerto Ricans and addressed their concerns. In Nevada, the ads featured Mexican Americans. Latinos are anything but a unified voting bloc in the U.S. elections. Young second-generation immigrants are powering the growth of progressive politics in California, while older Cuban immigrants are conservative mainstays in the Republican Party in Florida. Along the southwest border, established Latino families have bristled at the arrival of new migrants from Central and South America and have called for more limits on illegal immigration. The disparaging language used by Martinez triggered all the microaggressions I felt from other Mexicans and Latinos throughout my life, said Miguel Dominguez, 37, who is university educated and was born and raised in Los Angeles to Oaxacan parents. Growing up, we heard a lot of belittling derogatory terms like Oaxaquita and Indio, he said. When there were conflicts with neighbors, slurs were often hurled at his parents, who spoke Zapotec, an Oaxacan indigenous language, he recalled. Dominguez is a director of a nonprofit organization in South Los Angeles called Community Coalition. The group held a gathering on Wednesday for Black and Latino residents, including indigenous people, to air their grievances. At the end of the session, participants made a commitment to develop a collective, multiracial response to the challenge. There is a lot being done to build bridges and solidarity that is more powerful than hateful language, Dominguez said. We will see that as a city, Los Angeles can move forward after this. So this story was originally published in the New York Times. Yeah. Let's see here.